Okay, so you all have your science fair in process. It should be going, you should be experimenting, you should be starting to do your data. What we're going to look at today is how you set up the board. We'll look at some display boards, okay? We'll look at some actual real ones, and we'll talk about what constitutes a really good one, what constitutes like a fair one, and one that might need a little more work. What we want to look at is I want your paper to be like what I'm going to draw for us on the smart board. So you have a display board, okay, that is a trifold, and you can buy those at Hobby Lobby, you can buy them at Walmart, you can buy them wherever you want. Okay, how many of you have your boards already? Okay, very good. So the thing with the display board is that you have some creative license in how you're going to do it, okay? But there are some criteria that have to be there that I want there all the time in every board. So the first thing I want you guys to do is your board should always have a nice big title. Okay, so that should be the biggest, boldest thing on your paper. So on your little trifold brochure right now, I want you to write title really big across the top. You might see boards that have headers. You certainly can buy those and use those. That is optional. That is not required. It does not make a judge like your project anymore because it has that. Okay, but the big thing is it eye-catching? Is it can I see it across a room? When the judges walk into the room, they're going to see, 40 science fair projects here at least. They're going to see hundreds more at the U of A. So can they really see that really nice and big? So a really catchy title, nice and big. The rest of the board then has to follow like a newspaper reading, okay? So like I would want to look at your investigation and say, what was your question? What were you thinking of? And then how did you run the entire process? So we should always start out with what? What do we always start out with when we investigate in here? A problem that we turn into a, not yet, what do we turn into? Excellent, okay? So we want to start over here, and we want the first thing on our board to be our question. Okay, so in the top left-hand panel, you're going to have a question. And we'll talk about how you can use different fonts and really make that pop out on your board. But we want to start with a question. Okay, now that question is going to then set up what your investigation was about. So you will type that up and you'll put that there. After you've had this question, then what is the next step? So you've made a question, and now we're going to do what? Yeah, so there's something I want to find out. I have a problem, and I've made a question. It's setting me up how I'm going to test. So now I'm going to say, well, I think that if I do this, if I change these things, then this is what's going to happen. So your next heading that you will have is a hypothesis. Okay, now here's where your board can vary just a tad, all right? If you have room on this side, you may start your materials, and you may put your materials here. So I'm going to go ahead and put it here. Now, having said that, it depends on what else you're putting on your board, if you're going to add pictures and things like that. And you should kind of lay this out before you ever glue anything down. Kind of lay it all out and see how it looks and move things around a little bit. But I have to still follow the same flow. So I know that I have a question, I have a hypothesis. The next thing I have to know is what materials am I going to use? What would be the next step? Yeah, I do it, don't I? Okay, so that's the procedures. So you're going to have procedures next. I could, however, put my materials and my procedures here in the middle. Okay, so I could do that too and have my procedures right here, and I could have materials right here. Or I could start my procedures here and then run something next to that. The idea though is keep it a flow, keep it a nice, really good flow so that the judges can look at that, and anyone looking at your project can tell what you did and in what order. Now, the other thing that might go here in the middle would be pictures. Okay, so I want to see you doing it, or a picture of what you're doing. If I had something where I wanted to set up multiple cups and I was testing putting things in the cups, I'm going to want to snap a picture of that because that's an experimental setup. So that would look really good to have right here. If you are testing something and you're finding the temperature or the pH or any of those things we measure, it might be a really cool picture to have a thermometer in that cup showing you're testing. What I don't want to see is a picture of you like standing there holding your stuff, like, hey, here's me. Okay, it's not that kind of picture, right? It's a picture of you doing the experimentation. So I shouldn't see your face at all. And if you have subjects, I really shouldn't see their face. So if you must shoot them, remember we want to shoot them from the side, or we want to just shoot, like, if we're just shooting their nails or taking a picture of that, that's what we want to see, not necessarily your subject's face. So pictures are going to go here. Okay, so now I've had my question, I've made my hypothesis, I've given a material list, I've run the test. What comes next? Okay, so I'm going to do, not yet. What do I need to do before that? Yeah, I need to do something with all this data that I've collected. So hopefully you've collected lots and lots. So I'm going to have a section now for graphs. A lot of people you'll see on these boards, I'm going to show you, kind of put this graphing section here. And we can do that as a graph slash data. This can also go up here, though. All right, so maybe I have a materials procedures. I want to put my graph in, and then I want my pictures below. You know, you kind of do that with whatever you think looks good to you. Either is appropriate and either is acceptable. Does every single one have a graph? Every single one is going to have a graph because you have to show your data in graphical format, right? It's got to be a graph. Because you're looking at what's your question. Which flower will be absorbed the best, right? So aren't you going to have a graph that shows kinds of flowers and amount of absorption? Well, no, like we have one kind of flower in different colors. Okay, so you have different colors, amount of absorption. You still have to show me that. That has to be graphical. Okay, so if we need to talk separately about how you need to do that, we can do that. But it definitely has to have a graph. That's going to go here. Okay, and then now that I've done my graph, I've shown that, now what do I do? What do I do? Olivia? Yep, I'm going to do results, and I'm going to do a conclusion. Well, that depends on what you want to show. You don't want it to be, you know, too many pictures and get in the way of everything that you're doing. Okay. The other thing with this is making sure that you are displaying enough data that is going to either support or contradict or not support that hypothesis. Okay, so you'll do that in your results and your conclusions. So when we go looking at the rest of the boards, okay, we show you some different boards, you'll see what I mean by that. I want you to look at this real quickly, okay, kind of have that. You should have this as your template on your table. And I want to show you one other thing, because one thing that you can do is there are tons and tons of ideas that you can get from your display boards. So if you just do a search for display boards, and if you want to say science display boards, you'll pull up some. And then if I click on images, okay, look at all of these pictures of display boards. They're different in that they're creative, they are showcasing different things, but they're very much the same in the data that's on there. Okay, if I look at this one here, for example, okay, and I pull up this one, this is exactly like ours. Okay, the only difference is we don't do the abstract. We don't put our abstract on the board. But I still have my question. I have my hypothesis. If you put it back on research, that's kind of an optional thing. That's not required. But look here, materials, procedures, results, conclusion. So this Question, hypothesis, materials, procedures, results, conclusions, project titles. Those are things that must be on your board in that order. Other things that you're adding to that you do not necessarily need. The other thing is, all right, so you can go and look at any of these sites, and this is on Science Buddies. Okay, this is the site where you should go to look at all your information. This is an example of a board right here that has lots and lots of data. I don't expect yours to have that much data and things like that, but the key is with all of these display boards, they are very clean, they are very neat, they're very organized. Here's an example of one. Okay, again, now this one, I don't like this one because of where the hypothesis is, but everything else is pretty close to being in the same order. Here's one that has lots of information on it. And again, those things that are the same: purpose, hypothesis, experiment, pictures, data, results, conclusions. It goes in that same order. Okay, so you can look at any of these by doing a Google search, and that will give you all the information that you need.